Joining me now is Omar Samad. He is a former Afghan ambassador to both France and Canada. He's also a former spokesperson for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Kabul. And joining us from Kabul is Adela Raz. She is the deputy spokesperson to President Hamid Karzai. Welcome to both of you to the show. Ms. Raz, let me start with you in Kabul. An outcome from the election is taking a long time. The vote audit is now being brought into question. Is this likely to go on much longer?
First of all, thanks for having me on the show, and I'm glad that Ambassador Samad is there too. Well, coming into the technical part of it, how long it's going to take, I think it's beyond my scope of work in terms of understanding. It's the Independent Electoral Commission that will be able to answer this question. But in terms of the hope and what the Afghan government wants, and specifically His Excellency President Karzai, is that the election results should be announced as soon as possible, and the process should be done as soon as possible. And we hope to have the new president and the new government by September 2nd. That's where we stand, and that's what we're working for, and that's in terms of the Afghan government, the preparation for the inauguration and is on its way, and we're all prepared for that.
Ambassador, what are you hearing?
Well, I'm hearing that the audit process is continuing without the representatives of the two teams, Ghani's team and Abdullah's teams. The UN has made it clear that they want to go on while there's observation from independent Afghan observer teams as well as international monitors. This is not very good news because everyone wanted the teams to be involved, but as you know, about 48 hours ago, Abdullah's team put a halt to their participation because of what they call as inadequate vote invalidation processes. And so they're waiting to hear back from the UN. They had put many demands and proposals to the UN several weeks ago. They say that they haven't heard back definitively on whether those criteria will be accepted or not.
Ms. Raz, when we have a delay of this kind of uncertainty, surely it must impact on political stability in the country. Even the security of the country must be called into question right now. I mean, how concerned is the government about this delay?
Well, the concern from the government is pretty high, and we have stated this many times. Because the delay not only on the security aspect but also on the economics as well as just general and regular life of individuals in this country has been negatively impacted by the delay of the election results being announced and the auditing process being completed. So it is a concern, it's a severe concern on the government side as well as this public Afghan people, because I think for the first time in the history of this country, after more than 30-40 years, people came out to vote, and they voted in much enthusiasm and hope for the future. And I think in their part, their participation was pretty obvious for a better future, for a brighter future. And I think the part that the election results should be announced is something that everybody has been waiting for and looking forward. So the concern part, how much the Afghan government is concerned, I think our security entities and institutions, including the Ministry of Interior, Ministry of Defense, as well as NDS, they have announced it that security has been negatively impacted by that, and it's not a surprise, because usually what happens is the enemies of the country, when they see the political instability within the country, they try to take advantage of that and try to, as much as they can, and influence and bring instability and increase their attacks. But luckily, as you may have heard from our Ministry of Interior as well as Ministry of Defense, the preparation is there. They are ready to defend the country and work hard to maintain peace and security. But still, regardless, we do see the negative signs of this delay.
So, Ambassador, there you have it. You know, Afghans trying to exercise their democratic rights. We got to the situation because of these accusations and then counter-accusations of fraud. You yourself didn't mince your words on this. I mean, you said what is happening in the country, you call it a massive and brazen conspiracy to defraud the Afghan voters. Those are really tough words.
Yes. I think that there are two sides to this issue and where we stand today. On one hand, you have a process that has gone on for too long. It's very unfortunate. No one, I don't think anyone wanted this to happen. You have allegations, claims on all sides. You have a election process or election commissions that I think have proven not to do their job as was expected by the law and as well as by the Afghan people. The Afghan people, as Ms. Ross said, were defiant of all threats that existed and went and voted, and that is why their vote has to count. That is why anyone trying to undermine or anyone trying to sabotage this process and disrespect the vote of the average Afghan man or woman has to one day answer to this. And this is not an acceptable situation. What we have seen very clearly, and this the international community admits it, is a case of massive fraud. And the UN agrees with it. The US government agrees with it.
Is there evidence of this?
Of course, there's evidence of it. And if the process goes on according to the laws and according to the agreements, I think that we will have credibility. What we're looking for, what the Afghan people are looking for, is to have not only a prompt resolution of this process, but they're looking for credibility and legitimacy. The next president, whoever that may be, has to be seen and viewed as a legitimate leader who can exercise power and who can govern. Otherwise, the next person will have many issues and inability to govern the country. That is not a good recipe for the future of Afghanistan. There are economic problems, there is a security threat that exists. At the same time, we need to make sure that the political process moves according to what is fair and just in terms of the voters' vote. Now, I want to add that there's a political process on the side going on between Ghani and Abdullah. And I hope we can discuss this because that is also very important aside from the technical aspect of the election.
Okay, we'll get to that in a moment. Ms. Raz, I just want to get back to what the ambassador was saying about there being massive fraud in this election. I guess the Afghan government wants to see a transparent process. If there has been fraud, will we see evidence of that fraud? Will it be exposed? What is President Karzai doing to resolve this situation, diffuse the tensions around the election?
I think it's pretty clear. President Karzai's position from the beginning, from the early start of the election process, his commitment towards a free and fair election, a legitimate government, a transparent election, a government that, and a president that's going to be empowered through the votes of Afghans. And I think it's pretty obvious that right now where we stand in terms of timing and then the processes that has gone, that it was not only in words. I think it has been proven President Karzai's and Afghan government's commitment towards a free and fair and transparent election. And that's why I think when on one hand, I think what we have to all agree that Afghanistan, this democracy is pretty new and the experience itself is new. So with no doubt the challenges will be there, and even personally I think even in the upcoming elections in this country we will go through difficulties and bumpy roads. What we should not give up is hope and as well as our commitment. So what it is that true, there were issues, as you may have pointed out, that both teams didn't agree, and I do not want to speak on behalf of the both teams, or I do not want to speak on behalf of the Independent Electoral Commission, IEC. They have their own voice. But on behalf of the Afghan government, I think what the government tried to prove is, we saw it during the election day, both rounds, is the security forces coming out and trying to maintain security for Afghan people to come and vote. And on the political side, the president trying to facilitate the possibility of this election taking place, and his commitment for a transparent as well as democratic transition. And I think it's pretty obvious right now. We do have these conspiracies even before existed, that when before the first round of election and during the Loya Jirga for the BSA, I think everybody was thinking that the President Karzai will come and will change the constitution and will extend his term, and that didn't happen because it was true he will never do it. And then when the first round of election happened, people never thought that will take place, and as well as the second. I think when we come back in terms of what the government wants and what President Karzai wants, he definitely wants, and the government as well, to have a legitimate government, a government that's the president and the new government that has come into power through votes of Afghanistan. Every individual had the right to vote for that.
Okay.
And in terms of how much he had put his efforts, I think that's pretty obvious, and his commitment, and as well his legacy for a transparent as well as democratic transition.
Okay, so Ambassador, we have a situation now where, as Ms. Raz says, they want an outcome that is democratic, but we are in a stalemate right now. You've said the winner-take-all system is not applicable to Afghanistan. Why not?
It is not, unfortunately, because the system is flawed. The electoral system is flawed. I think that all Afghans expected the system to produce a result that was as credible, and I'm not talking about perfection, as credible and as acceptable and as legitimate as possible. And we found out after the first round, even though there were signs before that, indications before that, but after this first round, we found out that, unfortunately, in the runoff, there were some major errors and flaws in the system. So this means that in the future, we hope to fix this. But for now, on the technical side, we are at a stalemate. The stalemate is now such that the UN agreed that there was a problem. Secretary Kerry went twice and said it very openly, yes, there's a problem. If one of the candidates had not stood and taken a position on fraud, then we would probably have had another crisis in Afghanistan as a result of a not so legitimate leader emerging.
Right.
But all of this now is, now we are at a crossroads where the political track has to resolve this issue while we leave the technical side of it in the hands of professionals.
So you've got the UN handling that, but there is space here for some kind of political compromise between the two sides.
It seems that there are continued talks between both Mr. Ghani and Mr. Abdullah. There is hope that they will find the right formula on how to share and how to be partners. It's going to be a partnership. And the reason why I stress on the fact that winner takes all is not applicable to Afghanistan is if you look at society, if you look at the way politics has been played in Afghanistan, if you look at the challenges that we face, I think that it's very important that we have a solid, well-based partnership between the two leading candidates, the front-runners, on the constitutional ground as well. And that would help Afghanistan. It would also help the international community handling the future missions in Afghanistan.
Ambassador Samad, Adela Raz, stay with us. We'll talk a lot more about this. But we are going to take a break right now. Afghanistan, the situation there, the future, coming up, more coming up in just a few moments. Stay with us here on The Heat.